Hello, and welcome back to Prism & Company. My name is Colin, and on the docket today, an entry in my series examining the seven principles of art. Today's principle is... contrast. What is contrast? I hear you asking, and I'm so very glad you did. Well, my friends, contrast is the difference between the brightest and the darkest part of an image. An image that has very, very bright brights and very, very dark darks is considered to be a high contrast image, where an image that approaches gray, or maybe is all gray, is a low contrast image. It's all about the difference between the brights and the darks. Today, we will be using contrast in a discussion around intensity, directionality, and mystery. I can't remember three things, folks. Here we go. Let's jump right in and take a look. First up is intensity. Here we have the ancestor from the lovely Fantod pack. Now, the ancestor is as high contrast of an image as you can possibly get. It's literally black and white. White is our highest possible range for contrast, and black is the lowest possible. Now, there's lots of variation in how contrast can be used, but this is like your classic pure contrast composition. What is it doing though? What is the contrast really achieving here with the ancestor? Well, black parts of an image tend to push themselves deeper into the composition, where white parts tend to pull themselves towards the eye. So here, the ancestor wearing this black coat feels like he is deep within the card. Even the framing of our, I'm gonna say doorway here, it looks like, the doorway is kind of being pushed into the distance, where the frame of the wood, the white, is being pushed towards us. So we are well established inside the building, where the ancestor is being pushed out from the frame and his coat deeper into the outside. So he's not very intimidating in that way because he's far away. However, where his eyes should be, where his face is, where the human parts are, it's completely whited out, and that white is piercing. It is coming right towards us. So this card to me is almost like maybe an unwelcome visitor that is just gazing and like searing your eyes out to a point where you can't even make out the details or the face. Contrast in this composition is upping the intensity in every single space. There is no time where your eye can stop and not immediately be drawn back to this white, because again, this black is kind of pushing away. Our eyes naturally are drawn to the thing coming towards us because that is the action, that is the danger. Human beings, our nerves are just built to interact with the thing coming at us, and the gaze of this figure is coming at us fast. Let's take a look at how contrast can be used for directionality. The lovely Mermaid Tarot by Miss Dame Darcy. This is one of the portrait cards from the deck, as I like to call them. It's just a close-up portrait of a person embodying a card, and what a juicy little bit of contrast we have here. Now, it seems almost as high contrast as the ancestor, but this is pure black and white, and here we're starting to incorporate some shades of gray. We even have a little bit of color. It's very subtle, but it's there. And the entire composition in and of itself is set on beige paper, so immediately the contrast is being lowered. It is not as high a contrast to have beige with black as it is to have white with black. So we've toned down the knob a little bit. We've toned down some of that intensity. But now, contrast, instead of necessarily making this image intense, it's making it directional. We can see a light source, a very clear light source. The light is peeling onto this man's face, and we can see this edge of him is just cast into darkness. Now we still get some cool elements like his hat tipping back and getting darker in the corner, but his face below the hat and on the ridge of his nose and face just completely cast aside. It's a small strip of light, so we get the impression that the light source is small, maybe even the doorway from the ancestor. I imagine this King of Wands, we can see his eye there, he is looking at the ancestor who is peering back. Maybe that is the dark reflection in his eye there, and the brightness behind is the piercing gaze. Now, what is this actually saying? How might we use this in a reading? Well, we can say that this high contrast directional look is peering the gaze outwards. We can kind of put ourselves in the place of this figure. We can say, we are the King of Wands looking out at something bright. And it's not, like a sunrise. It's not casting the entire image in this warm glow. No, it's just a little strip of light. and yet he is still prepared. He is still ready to go. This is a face of a man who is prepared and hopeful. A man in this case, insert gendered person here. I'm speaking to the image of the King of Wands. This is the image of a person who is hopeful and prepared and battle ready. I'm looking for a word that starts with an S, but it's just not coming to me. I want to say swollen, but it's not swollen. Goodness gracious, it's not swollen. Okay, we're moving on. So instead of the intensity being ramped up here, it's really more focusing your eye on the space of the card, the direction that light is coming from. Now, this is also a fairly intense image because the lighting is so strong, it's so severe. I think severity and intensity definitely play up quite a bit when you increase the contrast and image. What is this word I'm looking for? Stoicness. It's not swollen. Oh my God, it's stoic. We're moving on to the next one. Our last use of contrast is for mystery. And here we have the Moon card from the True Black Tarot. Now, if you're not familiar with this deck, it's really, really slick. I'm gonna turn this up here. You can see the moon and some of these elements are actually reflective, but when seen from the right angle, they completely disappear. Super duper cool, neat touch. Now, this has significantly more value than some of our other cards do. And we're gonna talk about value in another video, but we can see tons and tons of shades of gray. However, the contrast is still blazingly high on this. We have pure white and deep pure black. It's almost the opposite of our ancestor card, which is kind of interesting because we have so much black on the periphery and white kind of cascading into the middle, but there are some similar elements like a white element on top, these kind of like elements wrapping around the side. These are weirdly similar images that are kind of inverted. We have the darkness where the bright used to be, or the brights where the darks used to be. Now, why does this invoke mystery? Because the contrast is so high, it peels the image back into darkness. Take this hand, for example. As it goes back into the distance, it gets darker and darker until it fades to black. An image with less contrast might let us see that hand moving farther into the background or revealing more of the scene. But because our colors are being pushed, or our values, I should say, are being pushed so hard, we're getting clipping, things are cutting off. The same with our figure's legs here, or even her torso. Things are being hidden by the darkness and they're being pushed away. Now, this is not necessarily contrast-based. This is very much about the lighting of the image. But one thing that's so true about all the principles of art is that they all begin to overlap at some point. Balance and contrast and value and form and shape, all of these things overlap in beautiful ways. But it's hard to deny that contrast is at a premium in this card. Now, the contrast is also doing interesting things by hiding details, but still making the physicality of the space make sense. For example, if you haven't seen this image before, what we're looking at is a woman reaching into a bowl, and I think it's a woman anyway. We have a person reaching into a bowl, no need to gender, and the bowl is actually being seen from a different perspective on top, and these are her fingers. It's so cool. It's mind-bendy. It's beautiful. In my opinion, it's exactly what the moon should be. But what we're seeing specifically with the water being poured out of this bowl is high contrast being put to work for mystery. We have the black water, the clear water, just pouring down over our figure here. And the only reason we know it's there is a tiny bit of shine on the top and then this bright white of the side. So we see the bowl itself refracting and diffusing as the water pours out. The image itself, the water, is completely invisible. The only thing that we're seeing is just bright pockets of contrast butting up next to each other, but done in such a way that it looks exactly like how water would behave. A really cool way to take only two colors, black and white, and create an incredibly rich tapestry. Create all of these detailed values that push themselves back into darkness and really amp up the mystery. Let's review. We looked at 3 examples of contrast here. We looked at intensity, how white is pushing towards the camera, if you will, or towards our viewing eye, and black is pushing itself away. We looked at directionality, how light can be seen coming from this angle. Our King of Wands is looking out at, perhaps even at our ancestor, giving us the opportunity to put ourselves in that place and see what that king is seeing. Or ramping up the mystery, allowing ourselves to kind of get lost in the image and let our mind fracture and refract in the same way that the water pouring out of this bowl is refracting. Letting ourselves get lost in the mystery of the card, the same way that our minds get lost in the mystery of the image. If you're looking for contrast in cards, look for very bright brights and very dark darks. And don't be afraid to read into contrast when you do a reading. Thank you so much for joining me, everybody, and I cannot wait to show you the next one. Bye-bye.